beyond the reach of sunlight, past the last whisper of our solar winds. A machine built by human hands has been drifting through the dark for nearly half a century. Voyager 2, launched in 1977, was never meant to return. It was built to witness, to cross the great planets, to exit the heliosphere, and to pass into the interstellar medium as humanity's loneliest ambassador. For decades, the world moved on. Voyager kept going. And then, without warning, it spoke back, not with routine telemetry, not with radiation readings, with something no one expected, a transmission so structured, so deliberate, and so profoundly wrong that the scientists who received it simply froze at first. It looked like background static, but buried inside was a repeating burst, precise, rhythmic, and unmistakably unnatural. When engineers began to decode it, they assumed interference. What they found instead was a pattern, intelligent, complex, and absolutely not from Earth. And when they traced it back to its source, they realized something was moving near Voyager 2. Not drifting, not orbiting, tracking. In that moment, the old spacecraft became something far more than a machine. It became a mirror, one reflecting a truth humanity had long chosen to deny. Voyager's instruments, though outdated by modern standards, are still remarkably sensitive, capable of detecting the subtlest shifts in plasma waves, magnetic fields, and cosmic radiation. But in a recent batch of data pulled from the Deep Space Network, a low-frequency spike appeared, one that repeated every 11.2 seconds. That is not cosmic background noise. That is a clock. Engineers initially dismissed it as a software glitch, but when they pulled older telemetry logs, they discovered the same pulse had occurred weeks earlier and been missed entirely. Now, with AI-enhanced filtering, the full picture emerged. The pulse wasn't just recurring, it was growing stronger, and it was coming from outside the probe. More unsettling still, it carried what scientists call a spectral signature, an inverted hydrogen resonance. Hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe, but twisted, flipped, as though something had taken the fundamental language of the cosmos and spoken it backwards. Some called it an anomaly. Others believed it was intentional. But either way, the silence of deep space had been broken not by noise, but by something that knew how to speak in mathematics. Using triangulation and frequency delay analysis, mission control determined that the source was not stationary. It was moving along a vector parallel to Voyager 2's trajectory, almost as if it were tailing the spacecraft. But this object obeyed no known orbital mechanics. It accelerated and decelerated in short bursts, defying the gravitational influence of any nearby mass. Every simulation using Newtonian physics failed. The object wasn't coasting. It was correcting, adjusting its speed in direct response to Voyager's faint transmissions. And it wasn't broadcasting toward Earth. It was reflecting our own signal back into the void, like a cosmic echo chamber. Whatever it was, it had waited in silence for decades, and Voyager's signal may have been the trigger. Things grew stranger when linguists and signal theorists were brought in, because within the anomalous transmission, there were binary segments that had not originated from Voyager 2's own command protocols. When visualized through pattern recognition tools, those segments formed symmetrical shapes, spirals, fractals, geometric alignments that eerily resembled ancient symbols found across Earth. From Sumerian cuneiform to Nazca glyphs, they weren't just signals. They were glyphs encoded in waveforms, and the structure of the message was non-random, eerily consistent with how an intelligent civilization might encode visual concepts. Using electromagnetic harmonics, some speculated that this wasn't a broadcast. It was a test, a way of measuring whether humanity had evolved to the point where it could even recognize a message, buried in such complexity. And if that theory is correct, then something remarkable and terrifying had just happened. The test had been passed. Then came a discovery that changed everything. A young physicist at Caltech ran the signal through a deep neural AI, designed to simulate cryptographic responses. What came back wasn't just a translation, it was a recurrence. The AI began generating predictive patterns that mirrored the transmission's logic, anticipating what might come next. That would be impossible unless the signal itself was recursive. a loop designed to provoke interaction like a riddle built to be solved. Simultaneously, Voyager 1, located billions of miles away in an entirely different region of space, registered a near-identical magnetic fluctuation to spacecraft, to anomalies, and a growing, deeply unsettling sense that these were not isolated events, but part of something coordinated. The question was no longer what is out there. It became, why now? Why, after almost 50 years of silence, would something suddenly choose to respond at precisely the moment humanity edged close enough to understand it? And then, just as scientists thought they had more time to decode the message, Voyager 2 went completely silent. Ground control initially assumed hardware failure. The spacecraft is, after all, over 46 years old. But then the anomalies multiplied. Deep Space Network receivers, not just in California, but simultaneously across Spain and Australia, reported a total loss of signal at the exact same timestamp, 1437 UTC. The probability of a simultaneous global equipment failure is, statistically, essentially zero. This was not a malfunction. Something had cut the signal from the outside, surgically, deliberately, and with timing that matched the very pulse pattern Voyager had detected. And 5 minutes after the blackout, a narrowband radio wave struck Earth from the same quadrant of space. Its strength matched signals we've only ever observed from distant pulsars, collapsed neutron stars at the far edges of the galaxy. Except this signal did not come from a neutron star. It came from somewhere near Voyager 2, and it was getting closer. Data later leaked from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory revealed a chilling update. A foreign object had begun to alter its course in direct response to Earth's deep space. Network pings, adjusting its trajectory every time a command or signal burst was sent toward Voyager 2. The implication was inescapable. This thing wasn't just hearing us, it was studying us, learning how we communicate with our machines. And its path was no longer wandering. It was on an intercept trajectory, not toward Voyager 2, but toward our solar system. Analysts gave it a name, Ecolonton, because it seemed to behave like an entity mimicking light and shadow, turning our own technology into its beacon. Voyager 2's signal had become a breadcrumb trail, not for us to find something, but for something to find us. As the object moved closer to the heliopause, the invisible boundary separating our solar winds from interstellar space, something extraordinary happened. The solar wind itself bent. Instruments aboard NASA's IBEX probe and ESA's solar orbiter recorded a sudden drop in solar wind pressure, followed by a complete collapse of flow along a narrow corridor, stretching outward in the direction of Voyager 2, that had never been observed before. Solar wind is constant, interrupted only by something massive, a planetary magnetosphere, or an unknown field emitter of extraordinary power. Yet this corridor, now called the solar veil, remained open for 3 hours before collapsing in on itself, and inside it, no radiation, no particles, just silence. It was as if something had opened a door, not through space but through the physics that govern it, and then, as suddenly as it had gone silent, Voyager 2 spoke again. But this time the data was encrypted. That should be impossible. Voyager has no encryption protocols. It was designed in the 1970s, long before such technology existed. And yet, when Mission Control decoded the binary stream, they found a rearranged version of the original Golden Record transmission, the message humanity had placed aboard the spacecraft nearly 50 years ago, as a gift to the cosmos. Except it had been altered. Human voices played backward, music shifted in pitch, star charts reflected in reverse, and some of the coordinates that once pointed to Earth now pointed to interstellar voids, regions of space where no stars exist. It was as if Voyager had been hijacked, its message repurposed. Not to say here we are, but to say, we're listening now. When engineers reviewed Voyager 2's onboard systems following the Golden Record anomaly, they made a discovery that silenced the room. Several command subroutines in the spacecraft's computer had been rewritten. Not corrupted, not degraded by cosmic radiation. Rewritten. Lines of code unchanged for 46 years had been updated with syntax, that Voyager's own processors were never designed to interpret. And yet it was executing those instructions. These new routines had not come from Earth, not from NASA, not from any ground-based transmission. They were internal, as though the craft had received instructions from somewhere else entirely, and simply obeyed. The most terrifying detail, those rewritten subroutines pointed to a single function: long-range transmission broadcast. But not toward Earth, toward deep interstellar space. Voyager was no longer just listening. It was responding, and we have no idea what it said.